No, a couple should be on Zoom. So
I've
Matt,
got,
no activity.
one of my board members out, so five of those,
Hey, Sue's coming.
work it from there.
Yeah, you can bring over too. I'm not gonna stay. I'm gonna be on Zoom.
I believe Tim Jones is coming. At least he was when I saw him the other day.
Sue said she was coming. I wasn't sure.
All right, so you're live streaming on YouTube. And you're recording. All right, so you should be good. I'll back this up a little bit. Just be careful of the cord.
It's a I don't show.
I think it's centered. I don't know. You can mess with it. Do however you want there. Like zooming in on Linda and you, and it's kind of going crazy.
Yeah, it'll zip around.
Yeah. All right, there you go, guys. I'll see you on Zoom in a minute.
See you in a minute.
We'll meet dinner.
You've had a nice week.
Yeah, I did. Bruce, are you into classic cars?
Yeah,
Okay, because I thought I saw you on the sail around the point with a really fancy looking white.
yeah, it was my OMG.
Uh-huh.
It's 1950.
Wow, good for you. I love MGs.
It's,
I wasn't sure if it was an MG or not.
I wanted to get a 52 because I was born in 52. And, you know, life happens. Every time I had the money, something came up. And one day, guys was just, hey, isn't this the kind of car you always wanted? I said, yeah. She goes, up for auction. So when's the auction? So, okay, I'll figure it out. You know, so, ladies. It is in half an hour.
Uh-huh.
I slopped
Hey.
bid down that.
Evening.
Oh, yeah,
I didn't think it went.
Good for you.
Tim, how are you, sir?
How you doing?
Much.
Looked in beautiful condition. I just saw it I was driving by.
Well, I got my scooter back.
Body.
Yeah, I saw it.
Good quality.
My neck put two new tires on, both my tires were right to the metal.
Oh, really?
Tom Clancy noticed it when he was walking.
Of course I did.
So I bought two of them.
Of course he did.
Yeah. He made sure, I told him in front of everybody.
You gotta sit up here.
There's in general.
How are we doing, Paul?
How you doing?
That's been a rough. Everything's locked up. Good. Hi,
Oh,
we're doing pretty good. Got, most of the Zoom board here.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure traffic will come, I would think.
None of my people are. Yes, I
you gotta play the rules.
live right next to you.
Maybe, is that true?
No, it's the, Source Bay. Junior.
Oh, the SPJSA. That could be.
Oh,
We
really?
have a plan.
That's all frustrating, you know? Well, when you're trying
Had
to.
to blow a couple.
Yeah, she
of
took a picture of
those.
yesterday.
Expensive.
Same time.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay.
Played it
Yeah.
last week.
Why wanna know?
Alzheimer's, yes.
Oh, they were just for new
That was
toys.
fun.
That's why I mean, it's why.
I mean,
No.
it was in a before, yeah, like, I opened it up and I was like, oh,
Well, she,
oh, there they are.
It was, she was older guys at the bar the other day, but she party.
Right.
Yeah, I got in a car accident, but she wanted to see. They did her doing it. I never had her.
Talking about common and.
Join us.
I will, I'll pull up a chair. If it's okay with you, I'd like to just do like an intro,
Sure.
so everybody's on the same page.
Just find you a chair.
Okay.
You know, before I start sitting, I see a couple.
I slide that table here, put you there.
Oh, that's,
Like slide the table right here.
oh, yeah.
Good name, Alex.
It's on wheels.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah, just wanna bump into. the-
Yep, exactly. So I'm Amy, nice to meet you in person.
Yeah.
I'm Dave Amy. Nice to meet
Dave?
you. Yes.
Tim Jones.
Tim. Stu.
Lynn Carlo.
Lynn?
Yep.
Okay,
Linda Young.
Linda. I know you.
Evan was going the opposite way, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that?
Kevin was pulling out and I was pulling in.
Yeah, he said he'd be on Zoom.
He's on there already.
Oh, okay.
Oh, gotcha.
We got the heat on here, I think.
Warm. I'm glad you're warm. That just means I'm okay then, because I was like, I'm warm.
How about that letter we got?
Which one?
How does it turn out?
Oh, yes. We can talk about that,
That's it.
different time.
I didn't see a letter.
Yeah, we got a bad one. Send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't moved in on emails.
Yeah, either not for some reason.
Really?
I think sometimes your name is spelled wrong from the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh.
It could be. It could be.
Zoning board gets here early.
There you go.
We're on time.
You don't know for that.
Oh,
We got it down for all that.
Hello.
Hi there.
I can, you know, I can sit up there, so I'm not.
Actually, when I had the two boards, you
Yeah.
can sit, the chairs there,
Yeah.
two boards sit together.
Okay.
I think that would be more apropos.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's. That just right there.
Hey.
Do you need your phone? Is this yours?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure you don't wanna look at my grandkids.
My phone and I left the phone. Oh my goodness. Oh, really? No, see, for example, no mercy now.
He did. The vets didn't make it. Oh. So he slept on the floor.
And.
I did it before when they did.
He's like. You didn't notice it when he nice in the office, you're like. That's why we're full.
This is what I do at my meetings, right? I'm always look.
Yes, wait.
Glancing up.
All right. It's 6 o'clock, so we'll start the work session. I think, to help everybody out, we ought to introduce ourselves. I'm Bruce Evener.
Ellen Farman.
Linda Yeoman.
Lynn Carlisle.
Dave Marinucci.
Tim Jones.
Sue Bassage.
And Bill McKee.
Pat Nolan.
Pat Nolan.
Amy Kendall.
Kathy Anderson. Okay. Benny, you said you'd like to say a few words?
And I'll apologize in advance because this is a little bit of a law school teaching kind of situation, but I wanted to make sure that we and the public are on the same page. And I know this is going to be a little simplistic. You already know it, I'm sure. But I wanted to frame like how the public thinks about what we're doing here. So first, I wanted to just outline what the responsibilities of the boards are. First, the Board of Trustees is obviously the lawmaker, right? Their obligation is to write the laws. Under the Constitution, the state constitution, and the laws of the state of New York, the village board of trustees has been granted what are called police powers. Okay, and every government has police powers. And one of those police powers is to write laws for public health, safety, and welfare. Okay. And so the Board of Trustees' obligation in enacting those laws is to think about the good of the public as a whole, right? That you can't enact a law that affects one particular person. You have to think about the obligation of the community as a whole. So that's the trustees' job. They're making the laws, which is why I've asked for them to come, because I think we all need to kind of be on the same page. The planning board, their job is to apply the law, right? So they get the law as written and enacted by the trustees. They have to apply it to specific situations, right? So the planning board also has to provide recommendations to the Board of Trustees on changes to the law or laws that needed to be enacted. Also provide, input on the comprehensive plan, for example, or the trustees may request the advice of the planning board on a particular issue. Okay, so that's the planning board job. So the planning board applies the law. And so that goes to what we're talking about today. It's really important that the Board of Trustees enacts a law that is very clear that the planning board can apply. Okay. The third board is the Zoning Board of Appeals. And there are two entities in the village that are allowed to interpret the law. not just apply it, but interpret it. One is the code enforcement officer, okay, and one is the zoning board of appeals. So, if, say, for example, there's a particular use that someone would like to make in a particular district, and there's a question about whether that's allowed, the first decision maker is the code enforcement officer. And if the individual doesn't like that decision, they have the option to appeal to the zoning board of appeals. So when we talk about the zoning board of appeals, it's what we call a quasi judicial entity. Quasi judicial meaning court-like, okay? So the zoning board of appeals can interpret the law as written, can hear appeals of decisions of other entities in the village, and also has the right to grant variances to the law written by the Board of Trustees. Okay, so they're not allowed to make law. That's not their job. The zoning board doesn't make law. Trustees make law. But I'm going to talk for just a moment about how that law is enacted. So I talked briefly about the police powers, right? Of that the trustees are responsible for enacting those types of law, and those types of law. It could be a floodplain law, docks and warnings law. All of those are public health, safety, and welfare laws. All right. Other examples, the New York State Building Code, for example. Okay. So while the trustees are responsible for the community as a whole, on kind of the tension is each individual property owner has rights, right? Has constitutional rights. You have the right not to have your property taken without due process and compensation, if appropriate. All right. So when zoning laws historically came into being, which was in the beginning of the 19th century, the first zoning code gets enacted, and they were initially acted for sometimes nefarious reasons. But the first reaction was, property owners said, you can't take away my property rights. You have to pay me. And on the other side, we have, a municipality saying we have the obligation and the right to protect the public, and to enact public health and safety laws. So it went up in the courts, and the Supreme Court said zoning laws are a valid exercise of a municipality's, in this case, the Board of Trustees, police powers to enact, to protect public health and safety and welfare. Okay. But we don't throw out the Constitution altogether. There are certain safeguards that are within zoning laws, by their nature. For example, in your code, and presumably in the code that, as we revise it, there's such thing as a non-conforming use. And I was trying to think about how to talk about that, but let's say you built a deck before there's a zoning code. You built a deck and it's 2 foot from the property line. And then the village enacts a code, and I don't know what your requirements are. This is just an example. So the village enacts a code that says any structure has to be 10 feet from the property line, but you've already got a deck that is 2 feet from the property line. The board can't force you to take down an existing deck. Okay. That would be a taking. That would require compensation. And in some cases, that may be appropriate. Let's say, if there's some kind of noxious use or something, you know, a village may choose to, you know, under, you know, to condemn the property and take it for a public use, and pay for it, right? But in the case of a deck, it's not that serious, right? So the deck is a non-conforming use and it can stay in place. Generally, this is how laws are written. It can stay in place as long as, you know, it continues to be used as a deck. It, you know, isn't destroyed, you know, and it's not used for anything else. That's generally how it works. However, if it was destroyed and it needed to be rebuilt, it would have to be built in compliance with the existing code. Okay, if, say you had vacant property, and, you know, it's zoned commercial, but you never did anything with it, and the village, decides to rezone it residential, you would not have a taking of your property. There would be no requirement that the village pay you for that change in zoning because you didn't have anything there to start with, right? So I wanted to make clear that, you know, we've had some kind of concerns raised about changes to the zoning law. And I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that existing uses, as long as they are, you know, not noxious uses, you know, they will, you know, we're not, any change to the zoning law isn't going to require somebody to knock down their house. Okay. What we're doing is providing guidance for future developments, and making sure that the development is within the bounds of what the trustees have enacted as a law. So what you know, I've only been here a few months. I've attended meetings of everybody. And I noticed, you know, I know that you're going through the process of redoing your zoning law. And so in these meetings, I have seen some problems come up in terms of, could a particular law be clearer? You know, should we be defining better the responsibility, you know, what application requirements, you know, what people should be bringing in for applications. And so all I wanted to do is make sure that you looked over it again and it, you know, just take a critical look to see if there's anything the village can be doing better. And if so, let's put it in place now while we're redoing the zoning law. Okay. And I thought, you know, sometimes when this happens, you know, it makes sense to bring all the boards together, so that the Board of Trustees understands what the concerns are of the Planning and Zoning Board, so that the Board of Trustees can enact a good law. And the Planning Board understands what the law is, so they can apply it consistently and correctly. And the Zoning Board understands what the objective of the law is. So if there is an application for a variance, they can make a reasoned determination about that. So all that to say, the planning board has, my understanding is, identified some issues that they'd like to talk about, you know, with regard to the village. And with that, I will turn it over to the planning board. And I'm sorry that was so long-winded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks good.
Thanks.
Well, Amy was speaking, we had 3 people join us. We have Mr. Cadley, they're here.
Sometimes we're pretty good. Bill, William. And Rich Ashton. We all introduced ourselves. I think everybody knows everybody, so. Okay, I'd like to start by giving each of the members a chance to express any concerns they have with problems that we've run into typically. There's been some applications that seem problematic. Anybody want to say anything? All right.
Are you asking the planning board or are you asking all of us?
Ask it.
Yeah, so I think we, I know it's been in the works and I know it's been talked about. But I mean, going back to like fifth grade, you know, who, what, where, when, why, how, you know, I think these basic questions have to be asked and answered on every application.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, the check boxes of them, you know, to just to keep consistency and fairness from application to application. And I watch a lot of these meetings. I've been a little more absent as of late because I've been busy with different things going on. But you know, in our process to simplify things for the board so that we don't have contention and we have consistency from one application to another, I feel that you know, we should have maybe 5 criteria on waterfront that, you know, require a littoral line survey. You know, somebody, if there's a question of boundary line, and I've seen us do it on one application in the recent, you know, the last couple of years, but you know, I've heard people talk about, let's say, the Martin project being as big as it is. How did that ever happen? How could that come about? And it was a lengthy process, so people weren't paying attention. But I would say that, like, in the future, a project of that magnitude, wouldn't it justify when someone's gonna invest millions of dollars? You know, shouldn't that be in there, a littoral line survey, so that, you know, everybody knows that those are his riparian rights and that's his right to develop to the point that he did, and, you know, he followed the process, all the agencies approved it. But I did notice that not one time was that brought up. And then, you know, it was a huge take. And you know, I'm not a legal surveyor, but you know, I drew some lines out and looked, and I'm like, well, it looks like it's in his riparian rights, but to the people that weren't paying attention, even as lengthy as that process was, I hear it weekly. How was that ever able to happen? You know, and if those riparian rights were established by a littoral line survey and that, then it would be very clear, and it wouldn't be on us, you know, it wouldn't be on the trustees, it wouldn't be on either planning or zoning. You know, and OGS had to look at it, you know, everybody had to look at it, but you know, we had, you know, a situation with the boathouse, Perfetta's boathouse just recently. And, you know, we have this on land, we have a 2-foot setback on waterfront commercial, but our section 86 of our dock and warning law says you need a 10-foot setback from the littoral line on the water. Which, you know, what rules there? I mean, is the 2-foot also on the water, or does the setback required by the section 86 of dock and mooring law? You know, it wasn't really brought up, and I just, you know, it was just interesting. So I feel that, you know, that may be one thing, you know, because we are in tight quarters, there are people who only own 35 foot of waterfront. And depending on if it's convex, concave, or whatever, their rights may not be what they think they are. And the neighbors' rights may not be what they think they are either. So I mean, that would take a lot of pressure off the boards if we made it a requirement.
Well, we have been.
I know, well, I've only seen one in recent history.
You
know,
So I think,
Yeah, I think.
sorry, can I?
Yeah,
So I think to sum up what he's saying, like, not trying to put words in your mouth, but you know, clarity in terms of what's required in an application, you know, that is certainly something we need to make sure that the zoning law has. And you know, to your point, like, you know, if the planning board wants a littoral survey, we should put that right in the law that the application has to include, you know, if you're on the waterfront, you need to include a littoral survey, that, you know, complies with the Docks and Warren's law of the village.
Or at least we,
I think what
at least make the neighbors sign off on it, you know, it's one thing to notify them, it's another one, if they're not aware of their rights. You know. It just, it's,
Okay.
Well, I think from a planning board standpoint, what we've run into recently are situations where the application for a project doesn't either look right or sit right from either a visual, aesthetic kind of view, and we don't feel we have enough teeth in the code that would say this isn't appropriate and we're not going to approve it because we don't think it's appropriate. And we want to know how we can go about putting more definition or teeth into the code to codify some of these situations. So we don't run into having to approve something that may by zoning be okay, but by planning doesn't seem to fit. Am I? I think so. I mean, that's what we're wrestling with as a committee.
And so to your point, an example might be you have a number of cottages along the water, and then someone puts in an application for a huge modern building in the middle of it. And so, you know, the questions that came up in the residential design standards that you circulated is how do we deal with mass and scale? And how do we think about how to look at these issues in the context of the existing neighborhood? So, and that's the Board of Trustees' exact job. Like, we're not worried about that necessarily that one property owner. We're concerned about the neighborhood. And so, in previous board meetings, we talked about, should it be a separate standard? Should it be right in the law? I did take a look at the village law, the state village law, and particularly the site plan review section. And it seems pretty clear to me that, it says the local law shall specify the land uses that require site plan approval and the elements to be included on plans. In the required site plan elements may include provisions related to parking, needs of access, screening, signs, landscaping, architectural features, location and dimensions of buildings, adjacent land uses, and physical features meant to protect adjacent land uses as well as any additional elements specified by the Board of Trustees in the local law. So I think the way to do it is through an amendment to the local law, not a separate design standard. And I have seen some villages that have done that. I noticed today the village of Hamburg includes some of those provisions. So in thinking about, I glanced through your design standards. I think these types of things can be easily incorporated into the existing law. And so I would encourage you, if you, as you talk through some of these issues, I'm happy to incorporate it into the local law. for
Well-
consideration by the board.
Yeah, explain that whole process.
The enactment of the law,
Well, I mean, if we come up with what we think are good standards, how does it then go to the trustees and get enacted?
yeah, so at this point, we have a draft law. It's not quite in a law form, so I still have to put it in the form of a law. But you would propose, the planning board would propose the law to the board of trustees. And the board of trustees ultimately is the decision maker. But that's why I asked people to come, right? So that's why I asked all three boards to come, because one of the options, and maybe we don't get it all done here now, is if you set up a committee of, board members from each of the boards to hash through some of these issues. The board of trustees can appoint a couple members, each board could appoint a couple members, and you kind of hash through it. It would make it easier for the board of trustees to understand that we have consensus on these issues. So that was my thought in inviting everybody here today.
Part of the difficulty is that with the variation in sizes that exists for different lots around the village. We've got lots that are probably 35 feet by 60 feet or smaller, okay? We've got lots that are an acre, okay, or more. It's very difficult to come up with a one-size-fits-all approach that works for different areas of the village. If you get down on the number streets where everything is very close together and the old lots still exist, there's a tendency on the part of applicants, and for that matter, for the boards, to look at those and say, well, that's the way it is down in the number streets, and you really can't not approve something that seems reasonable in its face, but it's really contradictory to the elements of the zone code as it currently exists, because by the time you do side setbacks and back setbacks and so on and so forth, there's really nothing left to work with on the parcel. In other areas of the village, that's certainly not the case, okay? So we have instances where buildings and applications are being made for things that are just oftentimes viewed as being out of character with the neighborhood. And we struggle with that, okay? And in other instances, we've got applications that come in where there's sizable lots, but somebody's looking for 100-foot by a 60-foot pole barn in the middle of the village, okay? And it's just, while it can be compliant with the code, it's just completely out of character. And as Bill was saying, we're sort of hamstrung with our own code that it's compliant with the code. Okay, but it's a problem from its looks.
Yeah, so, and here I haven't analyzed your zoning code, and this is not up to me. Like, I'll do whatever, the board wants to do in terms of the law. With respect to the first issue you mentioned, that there are small lots in a specific area that may require different zoning requirements, like, you can have more than one residential zoning district, okay? So there may be a zoning district for those numbered streets, and they have a different setback requirement.
So you're saying like R1, R2, R3?
Yeah.
I've seen it in other codes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and to that point, R1, R2, R3, maybe you know, R3 allows duplexes, but R1 doesn't, right? So you can do, so I would, and I'm glad we're talking through this, because I wasn't aware that that was an issue. So think about, should there be a change in zoning to address exactly that issue, that those lots can't have the same setbacks as other bigger lots, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it just
Right.
makes sense. You got a 30-foot lot versus what you just
Yeah.
explained, you know, you have an acre. It's not the same scale.
Right.
Our code covers.
You can't use the same yardstick.
No.
It's,
So you can have like a waterfront residential area, you know, whatever, and maybe that's worth considering is, you know, having a separate zone for those little lots. And, you know, think about that. To your second point, I think the residential design standards that you are looking at in terms of mass and scale will really go a long way to addressing that type of issue. So for example, if you have in your architectural requirements that you can't have more than one type of material on a building, for example, that might address some of your problem. If you say, you know, if all of the neighbors are little tiny cottages, you can't approve a building in the middle of them that's more than 20% bigger. Just making stuff up,
Whatever the scale. is.
whatever it is. whatever you
Oftentimes,
choose.
our issues are not with the principal building on the lot, the house.
Yeah.
The residence, okay? Oftentimes, our issues are associated with the accessory structures.
So let's address that, the no building on a lot may be X% bigger than the surrounding buildings. And that's a perfectly legitimate, that's exactly why zoning codes came into being in the first place. You know, the board of trustees needs to address the community issues, not the, like I said, not the individual property issues, right? So that's perfectly doable. And you know, we certainly can address that in the zoning law.
I think the ones that we find ourselves twisting more often than not are the accessory structures, are oftentimes fences. Because fences, particularly in a waterfront community where there's visual vistas and that sort of thing you want to preserve, fences are become problematic. And people have pets and animals and they want to put the fence all the way out to the water level. And it becomes problematic for us.
And the board can say no, right? We can, now that your community, you know, communicating that that's an issue, the board now understands that that's an issue.
Well, I think to your point, we all want to see if we are on the same page about issues like that, okay? Rather than us thinking one way and perhaps others on other boards or on the village board not thinking that same way.
I think that's where it's a good idea that she brought up that we should have a committee and have all board members on the committee, every board. I think that would really help a lot too.
Yeah, because the trustees are getting comments from the community all day, every day, probably.
Not just them.
Right, yes, exactly, not just that. So the point is, like, making sure that you all three boards are communicating about the issues that you're seeing, and, you know, ultimately, it's the board of trustees' responsibility, but you know, it's you all that have to apply it, and the trustees don't wanna make your jobs harder, right? Like, that's not what they're out to do, they wanna make it easier. So how do we do that, right?
well, so, so the point, and I've been watching this and And you guys have worked hard, I mean, the meetings have been long, it's been a long journey to get this draft to where it is. But I think somewhere along the line, we lost sight of the rewriting of our code, the rewriting of our code. We were granting too many variances, the county cited this for us, and and if we have a split zone piece, they don't want to grant a variance, so that put us into a realm where we're issuing special use permits to circumvent the variance process. Because if it's a project that has to go to the county, which would be on State Route 14, or within 300 foot or 500 foot of a park, a county park, then it has to go to county plan. And if it's a variance, they flat out, they came up with a rule of exclusions or exceptions that they don't have to hear, but if it is one they do have to hear, they, flat out said, well, we clean up our zoning, they are not granting the variances.
But you also bring up this split zone partials, which are a problem for us as well, okay?
So
let me just finish, so backing up. And I read through this, I was really laboring to get through a lot of it, and I got a lot of notes on it, but. We've made it complicated, I mean, we've made it even harder to the point where people are gonna be pushing, it's so restrictive. In my opinion, it's gotten. The historic review board, it's like we created a couple more boards now that we have to, first we gotta staff them, we gotta get people to weigh in on, but now, and there's a lot of words in there like adequate. It's not definitive, so that creates a lot of discussion, and that makes means anytime that things aren't definitive. It's gonna create a lot of discussion, and people are gonna be asking for variances in that, so I think we have to be clear. If we wanna lift the weight off our code enforcement officer. And we wanna lift the weight off of planning and zoning, and we wanna clean it up. We gotta be careful how restrictive we get, because then, people they're gonna be like, well, why can't I do this? This other guy didn't, and well, we said it's the code, and. We've granted a lot of variances, and I've never taken the zoning class, and I really need to do that. But like, I have a house that was built behind me, and I'm friends with the neighbors, and it's like, I gotta see them every day. And they wanna come 10 foot off the property line, and it's like. And they want to unsubdivide their lot, keep a second accessory dwelling unit, which was a little fishing cottage. And I know their family, their son lives in that, and their grandkids are there, and I'm like, why shouldn't this family be together? I said, go ahead and do it, but what was misrepresented to me, and it's like, yeah, the 10 foot was there for the variance, but the site plan that was given didn't have the house at the 10 foot, it had it where it was supposed to be. So I glanced at it quick, it's my fault, I didn't, I would have sat down with son, could you do 15, but. There was no, they did a Gerber home, it was standard footprints, they have standard plans that they use for their houses, and. The choice is, well, they could have got a different floor plan, they unsubdivided a lot, they could have went wider instead of deeper, and not been, so. Now, if you pull in my driveway. With the new flood elevation, and I have a 6-foot fence that I got a variance for. Their patio, their rear sliding glass doors are like maybe 1 foot below my 6-foot fence. So when they sit on their patio, they're on stage. Like if I sit in my backyard and they could do a performance for me back there. And that's my own fault. I mean, it's not your fault. I mean, I didn't look at the elevations as far as what the backyard was gonna look like. And it's, it pushed, if that wasn't right there, it wouldn't be so intrusive, but.
So
It's-
I'll say that you're highlighting exactly the tension that I mentioned earlier. And the tension is between the rights of the individual property owner and the good of the whole community, which is the board of trustees' job, right? And so, the planning board and the zoning board are looking at the individual's property. But that's why I think it's important for you all to be on the same page, because individual rights aren't necessarily good for the whole community, right? Do you understand? Like you've highlighted exactly the issue, and there's been other issues that the planning board has been looking at.
So I guess
recently,
my question is, so we're granting these variances,
and we shouldn't be.
are we granting them under the right pretense, is it the right, if it's just. They had an option to build a smaller house and not get a variance, and I've seen Bill push back on these quite a bit,
Well, Bill, the problem is, we don't have clear enough guidelines that are enforceable.
Yeah.
If we did, then we wouldn't run into the variances.
But they-
And that's what we're
But
trying.
but under zoning, they have to pass, there's 3 criteria, so is there 3 criteria? for-
It depends on the use or if it's a use variance or an area variance, but variances should be very hard to get. And so the reason for the variances, and that's kind of why I did my little spiel at the beginning. The reason for the variances is to protect against unconstitutional takings of property rights, right? So while the Board of Trustees has a police power that allows them to enact a law, we have to enact safeguards into that law to prevent people from losing their property rights, whether it's, we have to do it procedurally correctly, we have to, allow for non-conforming uses. There's those protections in the law, and the variances in village law, in state village law, there's multiple criteria for each type of variance. Use variances should almost never be granted. It's very, I have 3 cases right now in court on use variances, and it should be very hard to get them, okay? Area variances, there's more leeway, but you do have to consider, are you making your own problem? Like, could this person be doing something differently so they don't need an area variance, right? And so thinking about how many variances applications you get, should we be looking at the zoning law and thinking about, are the requirements appropriate? Should we be having a different zone for small little parcels on the numbered street that have different requirements?
More definitive language.
We definitely need more definitive language, and I started looking at the zoning law, and I thought, all I could think was, we need better definitions. Like, that's all I could think is, lawyers are trained to figure out to identify problems. And I just kept identifying more problems. So, I would wanna take a look at it, but first, I think we need to be on the same page about how to address sort of the community-wide issues and allow the planning board and zoning boards to do their jobs, dealing with these individual rights, in a consistent manner, and without resorting to variances in the way that we have been.
That's the objective of the night and this
Yeah.
committee going forward, in my mind, that's the objective. That's what we need to, I think, as a community, do.
Mhm.
And, like you said, two, you get 6 people and you work through and you talk about the issue of getting some teeth in some things that you've already identified, 2 or 3. And we talk about size and, 30-foot versus a, acre lot. I like that idea of having some, differences there. That allows a little wiggle room for you. That makes sense too.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, no,
And so you could say, if you're on the water, you can't have a fence. I mean, with the new floodplain law, you have to enact a new floodplain law. They're not gonna be able to build stuff that close to the water. It's gonna be harder to do that. So, but like having like some understanding of, in this particular area, if there's a scenic vista, you can't have a fence. You could say that. You want to. You have to identify what areas.
This stuff.
Yeah.
so-
That's the scenic, yeah.
But so we have different levels of security prison because humans are crazy. And no matter what you put before, somebody's gonna grab the
Absolutely.
way. It's like, great, I can't have my 6-foot fence, well, I'll put the max height shed right there. It's like, and I had that situation too, and I'm on a number of streets and our lots, like he said, this is 30, I got 50 foot frontage, 50 by 90, they're all pretty standard except for along Wickham. You know, but I had a neighbor put his max height shed, max size shed, and I had, you know, when I say in my backyard, I used to have a waterfront view. It's his prerogative, as long as he puts the shed in that meets the code, to put it where he wants. You know, it's not my view, I don't own it, I'm not on the water, so, you know, I think we gotta understand that too, you know, so.
Well, and that goes to the mass and scale issue that was brought up earlier and what's been put into, you know, we started talking about it in these design guidelines. I think that's a really important issue to address. Mass and scale is an issue.
On water. Well,
Yeah.
I think it has to be.
And the other thing, you know, the orientation issue that you brought up.
Hey, Mike.
I forget which.
I'm good, I'm listening. Hold on a sec.
Pardon me, would you mute yourself?
One of you had an application very recently and the owner of the property had. The house was on an angle and I thought, how did that get? You know, how was that built at an angle so that a variance was required in the back? That was my gut reaction. So like this, you know, some of the things you're talking about, the orientation is. We can easily enact into law. But I think, you know, not to keep pounding on it, I think it's gonna take
It's gonna take time.
a group of you to talk through these issues, a couple of sessions at least.
Well, my question now is, we've, I think, got the 190 section pretty much wrapped up. We did our work. We're ready to send that. We're ready for the
But this we're doing.
trustees.
Yeah, this
Do
would,
we need to delay this? Because I
Yes.
don't think we should.
no, we have to, we're not
That's
gonna
just
ask the
thinking.
trustees to pass a law that is incomplete. So we're gonna do this work.
Then work on codifying after, or
Yeah, well, we're gonna add these to the existing 190, and obviously 190 is right, 190 zoning, right?
Yes.
So the point is, we take a look at 190 as it's currently drafted. And think critically if there's anything that needs to be changed before it gets adopted. And add these provisions into it. These guidelines, the orientation, like this is our expectation, you know.
But almost simultaneously with that, we need to go back and look at our zoning map.
Yes,
And create the R1, the R2, the R3.
part
And understand what differences should
Mhm.
apply
Yeah.
to those R1, R2, R3. That's a sizable undertaking.
yes, it is. It is, and that's why I'm suggesting a committee, to take a look at these issues. Is to have, you know, you don't need to take up all the board's time. But you need to have a couple of sessions together to think about, you know. These big map issues.
I think a couple pen.
It doesn't have to be, honestly. You know, if you take a look at the tax map, you could probably draw a line around. The smaller lots.
The number streets
you know.
were probably one of the country's first planned unit developments. because
Yeah,
That was built
yeah.
for accretion and someone claimed that and they subdivided it all nice, neat 50 by 90 lots. It's pretty, that's like the easiest one.
Right.
Because the lots are all pretty much the same except for Wickham.
Yeah,
But I think there's a couple pieces that we can't leave out here, so. you know, like if someone's gonna arbitrate, you know, a legal bill or something, you know, what's the board consist of? 2 attorneys, 2 laymen, 2 business people. I think our committee, as much as we have these boards here, I think you need representation of the community. Of the different factions and the different zonings, because, you know, if not one of these people own. A particular zoning, there's no voice on the board for that, so now you got people ruling on other people's future and
Well-
that don't give a stake.
We'll never get it back.
Well, it all has to go through public.
They could
Yeah,
never get
they're
off,
definitely-
but is it getting done fairly enough?
Public hearings, okay,
Here.
so here's what I would recommend happening to address. Some of that, like, first of all, you definitely need planning, zoning, and the trustees on a board. You know, with those individuals having the authority to work through these issues, right? You know, if you wanted, you know, I'm gonna take my red pen to whatever you produce, right? You know, I'm not gonna let you enact something that's illegal. But like, I don't have any, you know, input on zoning. Once you have a draft, there would have to be, well, first of all, these meetings would need to be open to the public, right? And then you would have to have a draft, and once you have a draft, there has to be probably a couple public information sessions, right? To the extent, particularly that you're changing a zone. You know, and that's part of why at the beginning of this, I know that there's people online. We want them to understand, we're not making you tear down your house or change something that exists, okay? So we're not taking away an existing right,
Just consistency moving forward.
right?
And one of the things that I think a lot of people have issues with is and people talk about it even just tonight, we were talking about it, how there are lots of variances granted. And the standards for granting variances, if I'm not mistaken, is substantial hardship, which can't be, well, if I don't get this variance, I can't build as big a house as I want. That's not a
That's not
it's not a standard, you know, that can't be the standard. And, you know, if that was challenged by someone, that theoretically would not stand up if a variance were granted, but, you know.
I'm gonna
Standing.
butt in
back.
here, we're down to 9 minutes. I like the idea of the committee, under village code. The planning board is responsible for writing the code that gets sent to them. But I would like to have a committee with to fly under 2 members from each of the boards and have them meet, discuss the problems that they see, then give the planning board a couple meetings to come up with things, then send it back to that group. Have them work through it, see if it's what they're thinking or if it needs to move in a different direction, send it back. Until we get it to where we all agree. Does that
I like that.
I like it.
sound reasonable?
Yeah, I like that.
So I guess each of the boards is gonna have to
That by the 2 members.
write, not necessarily tonight, but we'll have to get the members. I would like Kevin involved in that board also, if he has time. I know Kevin You got a ton of stuff on you. But, and Amy, I would like. If the board, village board approves. You to, attend when we're working on this. To kind of. So, yeah, you can do that, or yeah, you ought to do that, you know? So.
But every other one, or, something.
So,
Yeah, so in terms of like setting up the committee to meet, I would just say suggest a, you know, like a recurring meeting every couple weeks or something for a little while, or like whatever you think.
I figure they can get together a couple times, generate. Their ideas and send it to the planning board, give us 1 or 2 meetings. Send it back. But yes, we need to have a schedule for at least the first 2 meetings of that committee. I don't. Put my glasses on so I can see the calendar. All right, this is 15th. 29th is the 5th Monday. Our board and zoning board only meet on first 4 Mondays. So that will be an open Monday. It doesn't have to be Monday, but I just. What do people think?
Monday's good.
Monday, so the best.
Yeah.
How does that work for?
Except the 29th is the White House tournament for anybody who's
Oh,
got.
that's right.
What's on the 29th?
Yes, so.
Yeah, it's just, it's a 29, yeah.
No, it's a golf house.
Already saying.
All right, so
Well, he said it doesn't have to be on Monday.
Right.
That's,
No, there's been a couple of them.
right, he said it doesn't have to be a Monday. maybe.
what's the 30th?
It'll be the first one.
That's a Tuesday.
So the other thing I hear, I'm hearing this massive density and I, hit a bear run on some of this personally, with what's been built on tonight. We do have a lot of people that are moving here, we see it every, knocking their houses down, their cottages down and they're moving here. Our future is changing
I get that, Phil,
and
one of the things, I have repeatedly said. We're without tourism and cottagers, the village would die.
but we also
But we
have
can't-
more permanent residents,
Well, I
thrive over a lot too.
I get that. And we have to meet a happy medium between the 2 groups. And one of the things is nobody wants to go vacation in a warehouse district. So it's gotta be attractive. And that's one of the problems, but let's get back to try to come up with a plan for giving a date and then each of the boards.
Well, if we're gonna nominate people, and this is kind of an Amy question, is that something that has to be done formally? In other words, do we have to meet as the village board and say, these are the people who are gonna be on that committee?
No,
Okay.
No, if you all agree.
we may want to do the selection process first and then the dates,
All right.
so we don't have conflicts.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Can
That's
we,
a good point.
we set a deadline for having,
We should talk town.
Yes,
Well, we
like sometime maybe that week, that block, you just mentioned what, 29th and 30th,
yeah,
maybe, we'll come up with a date there, but once you get the members from each group. We'll just do a group email, and then, hey, somebody take the lead and say,
well, that's fine, but
you know what I mean?
as long as we have a deadline for
Yes,
getting those people.
I would say that's
Well, I would say the board, the village board will do it this week.
Yeah, I think you do it this week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, zoning. They'll meet next week.
Well, they don't have to meet to form them. No,
So,
this is a non.
yeah, I don't think it has to be a formal decision about the members, if you do a group email and people agree.
so, zoning board's gotta get with,
Tom.
and figure it out. All right,
I'm definitely has to.
and, village board, I know you meet this week, we gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dallas. Thanks for your work.
Not much.
Well, yeah, they got it, they'll get it. That's an easy.
People were.
I'll tell them yesterday.
You were.
I was what?
Is that, we don't want to, I just said. I didn't want to get it.
I asked Jesse how.
Yeah.
He said he's doing fine.
Oh, you all right?
Yeah, he found.
He calls, okay. Feel sorry for him. Yeah.
You know, your construction stuff down your house?
Yeah, Larry and the guys.
There they are good then. I had 3 students over there doing my, I got brain. They put it in for me, then watch them work together. Big guy tenant, I said, hi there. The guy was over on the power. Oh, you didn't, yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, them 3 are meeting together.
Yeah. Hey, guys, you know, the real good meeting.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, then, we call this meeting to order. We've got our quorum, this is advertised in the main times. And then posted on the village website. Our first action is to review the minutes of the June 1st meeting. If people take a second. Thank you, ma'am.
The only thing that I see is the date of the file says July. So if we're looking for it later on, if somebody wanted to go back to June file, it says July. You know what I mean? The name of the file.
Okay.
That's an easy thing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
That's an easy. No.
I move that we accept the minutes as submitted.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes have been approved, thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's back to you. Okay, we have a short agenda. You can see the crowd here. Step on up. Got through zoning and I don't think there were any changes they made to your plans.
No.
Yes, your plans here. Kevin approves of plans, but we like to look at them.
Yeah, sure.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
No.
Looks pretty straightforward to me.
Well, I was gonna say, is, 3 out of 4,
Do these have to be stamped drawings, and are they stamped?
Kevin?
Are
Did
they
you ask
stamped?
if they have stamped? They do not have to be stamped.
They do not have to be stamped. Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Bless you.
All right, any questions for Mr. Spawn? All right. Everybody want to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve the final site plan for 7101, 7101 Overlook Drive to construct a 16 by 28 lean-to structure on the rear of the house, 8.9 feet from the rear property line, where 12.5 is required.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, you'll have to stop and see Kevin for a minute.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Good luck with
That was
We-
more
we're gonna have-
formality than Jeff Zimmer, and
Okay,
then Dwayne Wesley was gonna do the concrete work.
super.
I asked a couple of the neighbors who they'd recommend, and those are, so far they've been.
Where
great
is
to work with.
Wesley out of? I see his sons.
I wanna say Marion, but I could be wrong.
You know, they opened up that location on Ridge Road, close to Breakfast Place.
Next.
Yeah,
Nick's,
Wesley.
yeah, on the north side of the road. Probably a quarter of a mile before you get to Nick's as you're going west.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I've just met, him and Jeff come over my house a few times to look at stuff and.
Yeah.
Kind of go over a plan of attack, but I don't know where they actually live.
Yeah.
Some of the neighbors, like I said, who out here local would you recommend? And those are the two names I was giving them. And like I said, so far they've been good to work with.
Yeah, seeing their signs.
Well, thank you very much again.
Good luck, you
Have a
guys.
good evening.
All right. Before we adjourn, let's 2 members for our representation.
I think it's gonna be a fairly significant commitment.
I think it's gonna be a significant commitment for the whole board,
Right.
and then
Added with the
because
committee board.
There's gonna be a lot of rewrite.
I think so.
While we're at it. Do it. I'm happy you threw in the map.
I'm sorry.
I'm happy you threw in the zoning map.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing I was thinking, maybe I'm overthinking it, but like, would we have to write in something like, what if somebody bought 3 of those postage stamp lots together? You know,
And merger.
yeah, so you might wanna write something about,
Well, the existing zoning code actually requires that those undersized lots be combined. If there's consistent ownership,
oh, it does. Well, so then maybe it should be like a percentage of the size of the lot, if it, once
Right.
it gets to a certain size.
it never is easy.
Yeah, yeah.
No takers?
I mean, I am willing to help with it. If it's a lot of rewriting, I'll probably end up doing the rewriting anyway. I don't want somebody else to mess up the format.
Gotta go back without the main here.
Yeah,
Anybody know when she gets back?
I think she said she's going for 2 weeks and she sent she put something on Facebook that she arrived in Iceland. When was that, like 5 days ago? Something like that. So it's gonna be at least another week, I would say.
Well, maybe I can get her to respond to her text.
The only thing, like, I'm the newest member, so I don't have as much knowledge of all of that as you guys do. You know what I mean? I wouldn't wanna.
I'm willing to do it. But I'm always like. So what else, how do you feel?
I'm not dying to do a lot more work. To be honest with you.
I don't like either. I mean, I think
All right, well, how about then we'll make it you and I, and if Janine comes back and she really. Says, I want her to do that, I'll step aside. Okay,
Makes sense.
I mean, I think I'm in tune with what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Well, it's
A
all,
lot less in what Phil was talking about,
Mhm.
you know, which,
a little less, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
okay, let's end this meeting.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Could you use the mouse and shut us down?
Have a good night, guys.
You too, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
Where am I?
Oh. Does this mouse work?
Sometimes.
Just go up to the mouse isn't working.
No, it doesn't appear to be.
You have to be at the end of the table, all the way at the end, opposite of us. It won't work unless you're at the end for some reason.
Well, as long as you know that, that's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
Ah,